It's time for the Your Personal Bank Show with Ference Toth, financial literacy educator and speaker, entrepreneur, and chairman of the board of Bank Information. Take charge of your financial future with Your Personal Bank. Now here's Ference Toth.
Welcome to the Your Personal Bank Show. I'm just going to say this. If you missed the last show, I'm going to really encourage you to go to yourpersonalbank.com and check it out. I did an interview with John Burley, one of the top real estate experts in the country. And he's one of our favorite guests, by the way. He shared a lot of outstanding information regarding real estate, what's going on right now with the moratorium situations and all of that. Again, if you have any interest in real estate or real estate investing or anything along that line, I strongly encourage you to check out that show. It's on yourpersonalbank.com. You can listen to it, pass it on. Really encourage you to do so. Here's the thing. This is a money show. And of course, I intersperse quite a bit of politics in this show. That wasn't actually my original intention. It's just since the COVID shutdowns and all that type of stuff have happened, things have happened from a political standpoint and government standpoint, fast and furious. And so many of these things impact, our money. And so it's been a situation where I've often thought, well, should I start focusing more on money issues and things like that? But then things come up and it's almost like I'm forced to discuss it because, again, it affects our freedom. It affects our money. It affects our ability to earn money, keep money, pass it on to our, heirs, or any of those kinds of things. Affects our retirement, all those things, taxes. And I'm just going to warn you right now, there's something that's come out I just was learned about that really sticks in my craw. And this has to do with the second coronavirus bill. And, basically, buried on page 305 of the House bill is a section that just, I hope it rankles everybody. It should. And this provision, and it's part of the American Rescue Plan Act of 2021. I've discussed this in previous shows. There's a number of things in the bill that, have nothing to do with coronavirus or health issues at all, for that matter. In fact, I've seen several sources point out that only less than 10% of the bill has to do with health issues at all. So it's like calling it a coronavirus bailout bill or whatever is really not accurate. How's that? But anyway, here's the point. One of the things, again, it's on page 305. This is unreal. It is a provision to pay federal employees up to $1,400 a week for 15 weeks as paid time off if they have kids who are not enrolled in full-time in-classroom instruction. So they're not in school. The schools are not open because many of the states and various places won't open them. There's a lot of challenges with the teachers' unions, and there's been a lot of pushback and all that kind of stuff in terms of opening schools. But the federal government is proposing to pay federal employees, not anybody else, by the way. This is what's so frustrating. How's that? To pay federal employees, and by the way, it applies to federal part-time and seasonal employees also. They're eligible, but not anyone else. $1,400 a week for up to 15 weeks. While in the bill, everyone else gets $1,400 once. And that's if you're under certain income qualifications. So basically, the bill proposes to pay folks under a certain income range $1,400 one time. But if you're a federal employee, they'll pay you that $1,400 15 times. Now, folks, that's like $21,000, I believe. The title of this article, and many of them, is it's the swamp. It's called Personal Bailout for Bureaucrats, or the swamp takes care of the swamp. To carve out a section in the bill to take care of those who happen to work for the federal government, which, by the way, probably are some of the least likely folks to have lost income through COVID or lost their job, probably some of the least risk of doing so. to pay them 15 times more just because their kids can't go to attend school. By the way, there's all types of options. There's online school, there's stay-at-home options, there's charter schools, there's various options that exist out there. Both of my daughters are doing online school and have for the past year. Here's the thing, to pay the federal employees, but not anyone else. I don't have words. It's like the audacity, you talk about taking care of one group and just totally disregarding everyone else. I mean, it's ridiculous. Okay. I'm at a loss for words. All I can say is this. I just hope and pray that anyone that learns about this or knows about this reaches out to your senator, to your U.S. senator, and lets them know how you feel about this type of thing. There's many other things in the bill that are very frustrating for a lot of people. But again, for the federal government to take care of their employees, but not the rest of the people, and by the way, who was more affected by corona? Was a typical small business owner, for example, more affected by the coronavirus shutdowns or a government bureaucrat? I mean, let's just be real. This is the kind of thing that we're dealing with. This is the kind of thinking that we're dealing with. And, you know, I did a show a couple weeks ago that the title of the show was, I Don't Understand. And this is just something that, you know, I guess I'll say this doesn't compute. The fact that anybody even thought of this, I can't imagine, much less voted for it. I mean, it did pass the House. The fact that they thought this was okay, that you could carve out a certain group of people who happen to be federal employees in this case. See, here's the part I don't want anybody to miss. I don't really care if it was any group. I mean, only exception maybe to that is you carve out a group that was like directly affected by COVID shutdowns. Well, to me, that would probably be small business owners, restaurant owners, salon owners, gym owners, people like that primarily. Those are some of the folks, and I don't think anyone realistically can argue that. Those are some of the folks most affected by COVID more than anyone else. I would also want some kind of parameters in terms of like they had a hardship, they did have a loss of income. You know, some of these businesses didn't because they were able to, you know, manage or adjust or, you know. And so there's many businesses that have been doing just fine. In fact, so many are doing better than fine because they were able to adjust or adapt. So they shouldn't receive, any handouts or government. Again, it's not the government's money. I've shared this so many times, and I haven't heard this from any other source. My hope is this idea, this thought gains traction, and people start to understand that the government has no money. The only money they have to spend comes from taxpayers, us, or if they print dollars, right? That's it. So their ability, whenever they say, well, we're going to spend this, we're going to do that, please understand that what they're talking about is they're spending your dollars. And like I said, this is a wish of mine. I'm a fiscal conservative, okay? This has been a wish of mine for decades. This isn't new. It's become even more paramount because of the level of government spending that we've seen, particularly in the last year due to COVID and various things. My wish is simple. I wish, I wish our government, our representatives, the people we elect, would treat our money, not theirs, our money in a fiscally responsible way. See, this is the part I don't understand about Well, the general American public. It doesn't seem to be a major issue, major concern for a lot of people. It should be. I mean, if you gave your money to anyone to manage for you, like many people in the financial industry do, if they even came close to managing it anywhere like the federal government manages our money, you would absolutely fire them in an instant. You know what I'm saying? You would not put up with it. Why do we put up with it with our representatives? Particularly our federal representatives, but sometimes state too. Why do we put up with that? See, that's the question I don't understand. Why is it not important? I mean, we expect it in every other aspect of our lives. Why not there? And the people still have the control. It's like our founding document said, we the people. And we get our inalienable rights, not from government. We get those from our Creator. Those are ours, okay? Now, I understand some people disagree with that thought process. Some people think and believe that the source of power and stuff is from government. I, in fact, saw an article today that even talked about they were upset because people weren't listening to the government. Well, here's the thing I think they need to understand. The government is made up of people who are imperfect, right? Just because you happen to be a government representative or work in a bureaucracy or anything like that, you're not any more infallible or any smarter than anyone else. Now, I know a lot of them don't think that way, but that's a fact. They're just people, too. They make mistakes, too. They're not perfect either. We shouldn't expect them to be perfect. I don't. But I do expect them to be reasonable, and from a fiscal standpoint, I expect a basic fiscal responsibility. And we're not seeing that at all. This latest bill with, again, giving federal employees $1,400 up to 15 weeks if their kids aren't in school, yet giving general Americans who were affected far more by COVID restrictions, $1,400 once. There's a lack of fairness there. There's a lack of understanding. There's a major lack. They're out of touch. Stay tuned in the next segment. I'm going to talk about some other things that are coming up that will affect your money, so stay tuned.
For more information on Your Personal Bank, feel free to contact Ference at yourpersonalbank.com. Back to the Your Personal Bank Show with Ference Toth.
Welcome back to the Your Personal Bank Show. I have had to share so many things, like I mentioned in the last segment, that fall into the political realm that affect our money. It's kind of frustrating sometimes. And it's been coming fast and furious. And frankly, I know for a lot of people I've talked to and kept up with, and it's been a situation where some people have just fed up, threw their hands in the air and put their head in the sand and just focus on what they're doing and just not worry about or pay much attention to really what's going on. Frankly, I understand that sentiment. I find it many things that are going on very frustrating also. I don't feel like particularly, I haven't felt this way in a long time. We're talking about years and years, but particularly most recently, I don't feel like our representatives are really representing us. And I think that sentiment is pretty rampant, and not just in one party. I think it's across the board. In fact, I've shared this many times that I'm an independent. I lean libertarian probably more than anything else. I'm a fiscal conservative. Okay. The thing is, I mean, I'm frankly, the studies have shown I'm part of the fastest growing political party out there, the Independents, because I don't feel fully at home with either party. Okay. There's things about each party that I agree with, and there's some major things on each party I do not agree with. And so these last several elections, it's been some time since I felt I've voted for somebody, say in a presidential election, that I agreed with, most everything they stood for. It's sort of been the joke is voting for the lesser of the two evils. Who do you have more in common with your views and your situations? And that's kind of where we've been at. And I understand where it just gets frustrating. In fact, I was talking to a gentleman, a day or two ago, successful business owner, and he even pointed out, somebody asked him a political question, and we were in a group of folks, and he said, things got so heated last fall before the election, he just got fed up, which I think a lot of people did. He doesn't lean strongly one way or the other. And he said, I just decided I want to deal with it. And he goes, so anybody that talked about political things, he blocked them on his Facebook and whatnot. So he just didn't have to deal with it. And he's like, I decided to focus on my business and do what I needed to do and all that. And the things that are important to me. And he said, one of the benefits, he goes, and he pointed this out, I get it, is that, he says, everything I get messages-wise is just positive now. And I understand it. That's very appealing. I probably was in that camp more so prior to doing these radio shows. I would say I definitely was in that camp. I didn't pay a lot of attention to what Washington did most of the time, only if something major came along. I was really focused about, running my business, living my life, spending time with my family, the things that are frankly important to me. Like I think a lot of Americans. And my attitude has always been, well, the less the government's in my life, the better. Just leave me alone. Let me do my thing. You do your job and I'll do mine, right? So I understand the sentiment this business owner expressed, and I think it's a fairly common one. The problem is this. Well, first of all, by doing this radio show, it's forced me to read a lot more current information and see what's going on and share, part of the show is sharing my opinions and myself and others. And so I've paid a lot more attention to current events than I have for years. And again, so many things are so frustrating that, sometimes I just want to, step back and say, chuck it. You know what I'm saying? The problem we have now, though, is putting your head in the sand and just ignoring everything, or putting the blinders on and ignoring everything around you normally would work. I mean, in normal situations, our government, although maybe don't always agree with what they're doing one way or another, they generally haven't really threatened our freedoms or really threatened to make major changes that could have very significant impacts of our ability to live like we have known, having the freedoms we have, freedom of speech, the ability to pursue life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness, run our business, do our job, raise our families, put some money away for retirement, minimize the taxes as much as possible, pass something on to the next generation eventually, things like that. Those things have never really been under threat like they have recently. And I know a lot of people are alarmists and a lot of people say a lot of things, but the fact is those freedoms, the ability for us to live our lives as we know it, has probably never been under threat as strongly as it has been since the beginning of our country. The one exception may be the Civil War in terms of difference of opinions, but that would be about it. It's a seminal moment a generational moment in the history of our country. And I heard something the other day that I thought was very wise. And he was talking about not too long ago, I remember this, and anybody's probably, over the age of 30 probably remembers this. It wasn't that long ago that somebody that coming out, say that they were like homosexual, for example, we all know this, was a big deal. Coming out of the closet was a really big deal. And there was a lot of social, it could threaten somebody's job and all types of things if somebody knew that. So it was a very, very big deal. Of course, today it's readily accepted, even celebrated in many circles. That's totally changed. What's interesting, and by the way, I'm going to say this, somebody's sexual preferences I don't think should make a difference in terms of how I would treat them, what type of job they should have, or any of that. So I think a lot of that was kind of silly, but that's my personal opinion. I'm glad that's gone away. Now, at the same time, I don't want to shove down my throat. Okay, there's a balance, right? But the thing is this. What's happened now is because of the threats to free speech and all and political opinions and stuff, we have today what we call a lot of closet conservatives. In other words, they think, I talk to them personally, many of them, they think and believe and are oftentimes the same way as I do in many, many things, but they're afraid to say anything. They're afraid for the repercussions. They're afraid of their job or income or whatever else. And, and there's a price to be paid to come out and, come out of the closet, so to speak, like there was back then for somebody who's a homosexual, for example. Well, it's time for people who are closet conservatives to come out. See, how do they kowtow the population? Every oppressive government in history has followed the same path, is they get the masses, they use fear to get the masses not to say anything. Well, now's the time to step up, and they can't threaten you if you're not afraid. Stay tuned in the next segment because I really want to talk about this further because it's so important.
For more information on Your Personal Bank, feel free to contact Ference at yourpersonalbank.com. Back to the Your Personal Bank Show with Ference Toth.
Welcome back to the Your Personal Bank Show. We're rounding third. Been talking a lot about things that impact our money, the political things that are going on recently that very well may have a major impact on our ability to earn, keep, pass on money we earn, how much taxes we're going to pay, various things. Those are all important. The reason I do this show is the biggest thing is I want to educate people about an alternative way that they can grow wealth, build wealth. Everything doesn't necessarily have to be in the stock market or real estate or whatever. Your personal bank is quite simply a very, very key, simple tool that's used by many wealthy families, businesses, banks, corporations, and others. And like the last show we did, the interview with John Burley, real estate expert. Again, highly encourage you to listen to that. If you missed it, go to yourpersonalbank.com. You can go to any previously recorded shows and check it out. John Burley is one of the top real estate experts in the country. Literally, best-selling author. He spoke with many of the top folks in the country, like Tom Hopkins, Zig Ziglar before he passed. Okay, he's the most knowledgeable person about real estate I know. The thing is, we even talked about in this show that Your Personal Bank, one of the number one groups of folks that use this tool, and this is from the banks, are real estate investors. That's why I invited him onto the show. I mean, the concept's quite simple, and it's all about taking control of your money. I mean, do you want to have your money in what I call the government system of, qualified plans where you have to follow their rules in terms of contributions, distributions, there's penalty. We all know there's tax penalties. and things like that if you don't follow their rules, and those rules can often change. I'm not saying necessarily not to do that at all, but what I'm saying is build an alternative bucket of money that happens to be income tax free, has guarantees, you have access to the funds. We have companies that are still paying 6% dividends today and haven't missed paying that or more for the last 25 years. Heck, I'll show you the chart and all the history of the companies of what their actually dividends have been paying, all the top dividend payers. And literally, many of them have never missed a dividend since before the Civil War. So that's one heck of a track record in terms of dividends. And then the second part of the personal bank concept is we set up a bank line of credit using the cash in the policy as collateral for the loan. And the key point is really simple. It's not that complicated. If your dividends, you're earning more in dividends than you're getting charged in interest from the bank when you access the funds to pay bills, purchase items, or invest in other things. And like we talked about in the last show, many real estate investors use this tool to enhance their real estate investment returns. I mean, it doesn't have to be a real estate investment, by the way. It could be any asset, any investment you can think of. Stocks, bonds, mutual funds, CDs, annuities, cryptocurrency, gold, doesn't matter. If you have a rate of return and you flow it through the personal bank and get positive arbitrage, as I just explained, you just increased your rate of return, and the typical increase is about 2 to 3% annually. By the way, that's every single year. So, gosh, if your rate of return is 10%, for example, well, do you want to make 12 or 13? That's the question I ask. But most importantly, you're outside of the government rules and the government system. It's tax-free. It's your money. You control it. It's about control, folks. And with everything that's going on right now, we're seeing a federal government that's, well, this past year, frankly, primarily the federal government has overreached in terms, in my opinion, taking controls of people's lives or impacting, sometimes in devastating manners, people's lives, their businesses, their finances, their jobs, all of those things. And what's encouraging is several of the states are finally starting to step up and protecting their citizens' rights and giving them the options, the ability to continue to work and earn a living and opening their states up and all that. I know there's a lot of disagreement on that out there. But I think our country was built on freedoms. And I think our country should lean towards, protecting those freedoms versus the other way. Look, mask mandate or no mask mandate, for example, which I know has been a very contentious issue, has become very political. And I've said this from day one. I don't understand why it's political at all. To me, a virus is not political. A virus doesn't care what your political beliefs are. A virus is a virus, right? And as far as how you respond to that, has nothing, absolutely nothing to do with your political beliefs. I think you should be able to make the decisions that make sense for you. I've often shared this. Approximately 2 weeks prior to any mask mandate being issued here in Arizona, myself and my family started wearing masks because we saw there was an uptick in cases. Very little was known about coronavirus back then. I had it, actually, turns out, prior to that, unknowingly, then later found out, according to my natural path. And the thing is, because there was uncertainty about it, and we didn't know and how it was transmitted and how serious it was and various things, we as a family decided to start taking precautions a couple weeks or so before the government came out and said anything, which honestly, I think that's the way it should be. You know, those that need to shelter should do so. You know, I've often shared my mom, who's in her late 70s, had heart issues. She was the epitome of high risk. She needed to shelter and did. And I encouraged her to do so, and so did her doctor, and she did. But somebody who has no risk factors like myself, I took some precautions because of the unknowingness of it, lack of knowledge. But then later, after learning more about it, I think it should have been up to me. Now, there's private property rights. I get that and support those. If a business says, hey, look, you got to wear a mask to come into our place of business, that's another thing. I never understood why anybody would have a problem with that or challenge that. I thought that was very immature, because I respect that business's property. It's like when you go to somebody's house, you respect that person's house. If they want you to take your shoes off, for example, to walk into their house, we should respect that. It's their house. It's their rules. Now, at the same time, we have the choice and the right to not go to that business, right? Or not go to that person's house. So I never understood why it was an issue. And then when this government started creating mandates, and they still have many of them in many states, what are we? Are we 3-year-olds? Are we just a bunch of kids who can't take care of ourselves anymore? What happened to the adults? Where are the adults in the room? In my opinion, a government mandate is offensive. You're telling me, you're demanding I do something, and you're basically insinuating I'm not smart enough to figure out how to take care of myself or others around me. And I find that deeply offensive. Now, again, I was smart about it. I supported wearing a mask when I'm inside around other people. I do, typically. But if I'm outside, it's scientific. I mean, they talk about the science. Any virus, not just coronavirus, any virus is far, far less ability to transmit outdoors than indoors. That's just basic common sense. Okay? So I'm not going to wear a mask while I'm outside, especially if I'm by myself, basically, without anybody else around. Frankly, that just seems silly to me. But if you want to wear one, that's, you have the right to do that. I'm not going to sit here and tell you can't. Do what you feel is right. But I kind of got off track there a bit. But I guess what I want to say is the crux of your personal bank is really about taking control of your money, taking back control of your life. And today, I believe that's more important than ever. The fact is, far too many people, in my opinion, allowed the government to basically dictate their lives, and they kind of just rolled over and they just accepted it. And they were okay with people telling them what to do. Maybe they weren't so okay about it, but they did it anyway. I'm not sure. I know I wasn't okay with it. In fact, maybe I've got a little bit of a rebellious streak in me. I don't know. But, it's what? Honey, you can attract a lot more flies with honey than vinegar. In fact, my opinion is what the government and leaders should have done is said, look, we have this thing going around. We're not real sure about it early on. There's maybe some risk factors. We recommend this. We encourage you to do this, but be smart. What's wrong with that? And if you don't feel comfortable being around other people or various things, or you want to wear a mask or then do those things. I'm not stopping you. I'm not stepping on anybody's toes. But it became so much more than that. And that's where I have a lot of concern about the direction of our country. Have we gotten so comfortable? Fat, dumb, and lazy maybe is a better, I don't know if that's the right word. I'm not trying to offend anyone. But have we just gotten so comfortable that we don't realize, like a frog in a pot of boiling water? You've heard the story. If you throw a frog into a pot of boiling water, what's the frog going to do? Well, jump out immediately. But if you put a frog in a pot of water that's just kind of room temperature and you very, very slowly increase the heat, eventually the frog boils because he's comfortable. Have we gotten to that point as a country? Are we that comfortable as a people? I mean, there's no question we've been blessed like no country in the history of man. We have one of the most successful societies in history, one of the most free societies financially. I mean, in most parts of the world, this is just a plain fact. No one can argue this. that if you live at the poverty level in the United States, that would be a dream for many people around the world. In fact, most people around the world, that would be a dream income for them. They could live like kings. And we consider that a poverty level. That's how successful we've become. Are we just taking it for granted? Are we just going to go with the flow and like a dead fish kind of just float down the river and do whatever our quote-unquote experts say? I mean, I get this question all the time about, IRAs or investments and things like that. And I'll ask people, why do you have this account or why do you have this investment and all that? And it's shocking to me how often the answer is, well, I don't know, it's what somebody told me to do, or it's what everybody else does. And my response is always the same. Does that sound like good reasons to do this? In other words, think it through. Great example. I've talked about this in previous shows. Should you pay taxes on your income now or should you pay it later? That's the difference of an IRA versus a Roth, for example, or a personal bank policy, which grows tax-free. Pay the tax now on the seed. Should you pay the tax on the seed or the harvest? In other words, pay it on a small amount now with current rates, or should you pay it in the future on a probably larger amount at a future unknown rate? I can't answer that question right now on the radio, but if you even asked the question, if you even analyzed it or thought about it, see, those are the things I do when I meet with somebody. I get them to start to think, and I get them to start to answer questions about them and their lives. And that's the beginning of taking control of your life and not allowing somebody else to influence or dictate it. Folks, that's the difference. Take control, take over your life for you, your family, and your business. And as always, contact us at yourpersonalbank.com, and I can show you the steps on how you can do that for you.
For more information on Your Personal Bank, feel free to contact Ference at yourpersonalbank.com. Back to the Your Personal Bank Show with Ference Toth.
Welcome back to the Your Personal Bank Show. I know some people may not agree with the statements I made in the last segment about it's time to step up for what you believe in. And if you missed it, I think it's extremely important. Again, go to yourpersonalbank.com and listen to any of the previously recorded shows, including the last segment if you missed it. But I think this is supremely important because, again, if the majority of people do not show fear, look, if you're for big government and you think it's a good idea for federal employees, for example, to get $1,400 a week for 15 weeks because their kids are not attending school, where the rest of Americans just get $1,400 once if they're under a certain income limit. If you think that's a good idea, fine. Come out and support that. Okay? I served in the military, and you talk to just about anyone who served in the military. Look, one of the reasons that we serve is real simple. It's to protect the freedom and the rights, for example, rights of free speech. Look, I don't have to agree with you to support you, your right to your beliefs. And just about anyone in the military you talk to who's ever served will give you that response. It's almost universal, okay? And like I've shared this often, I've not heard this in other places either. There's a few key points, a few key thoughts that I believe really, really need to be embedded in people. And I've shared one of them earlier in the show today is, look, the government has no money. It's not their money. It's ours. They get it from us, the taxpayer, right? So they should be fiscally responsible. I don't think that's a revolutionary statement, or at least it shouldn't be. In fact, we should hold them accountable. We should hold our representatives, hold their feet to the fire. And the fact that we generally don't, that's our own fault. That needs to change. We need to start making a difference there. And by the way, our representatives, most politicians are very sensitive to the will of the people. In other words, there are always many of them. Well, we know this. They got their finger in the wind in terms of where their constituents lie and in terms of their ability to get reelected, right? I don't doubt their desire to get reelected because, frankly, they got a pretty good gig. I think most people know that. And they want to keep that gig, generally speaking, once they get in there. So if a vocal portion of the people say, look, start treating our money responsibly, they'll get the message. See, our politicians, our representatives, do many of the things they do because they benefit from it. And if you want to change the behavior and the direction of our representatives, we need to speak up. So contact your congressperson. Contact your senator. You know, so few people will do it, okay? I imagine it's way less than 1% ever reach out to their representative. Now think about it. If you're one of those, let's say it is 1%. I don't even know what that percentage is, but let's just say it's 1%. Well, that means your voice will have the power of 100, won't it? Because the other 99 aren't going to speak up. So you can have a very significant impact on what your representative is doing, okay? Email them, call them. I've been doing that myself recently. In fact, I just got called back today from one of our U.S. senators here in Arizona because I've reached out to her, okay? And partly to express my feelings about, the Senate filibuster, for example, and things like that. My point is, your voice will have the power of 100. A lot of people say, it's not going to make any difference. Why should I bother? It has way more of a difference than you think or will you realize. So get involved. Look, and like I said, I'm not telling you what to say. I'm telling you to share your positions, what you think our representatives should do. Okay? That's your right as American. At least it is currently. And we need to let we need to let them know where we stand. Okay? If enough people do that, it will make a difference. Almost any politician will agree with that, and they'll tell you the same thing. So reach out to them. I strongly encourage you to do so. Let them know where you stand. Again, if you think this is a good idea, giving the federal employees more money than, say, a small business owner that's been devastated by COVID, then let them know that. If you don't think it's a good idea, let them know that. Okay? And I serve partially for that reason, so you have that right to do it. By the way, folks who gave the ultimate sacrifice, why do soldiers fight in wars? And you ask, why they serve? Why do military serve? Everybody says they love the military. Well, guess what? Primarily they do it to support freedom and the ability to reach out to our representatives and let them know how we feel. Okay? If we don't exercise that right, that sacrifice that many of our service members have made goes for naught. Stay tuned in the next segment. I've got one more thing to talk about, and it's about H.R. 1 and how it's going to affect us financially. So stay tuned.
For more information on Your Personal Bank, feel free to contact Ference at yourpersonalbank.com. This show is designed to provide accurate and authoritative information. The presenter and guest on this program do not engage in legal, accounting, or tax advice. Professional advice regarding your situation should be sought if required. Products and riders may have limitations and may not be available in all states. Excessive unpaid loans may affect performance. Distributions may become taxable if not managed properly. Replacements may not be suitable for everyone. There may be charges when replacing coverage. Compare when considering a replacement. Dividend rates and baseline of credit rates may change. Contact yourpersonalbank.com for current rates.